Welcome to E-commerce Marketing with the Pitbulls, where we catch up with craft brands to hear their story and learn how they're growing their e-commerce channel. In today's episode, we were joined by Andy Segal, who was the senior sales manager at Honey Mamas, a refrigerated chocolate that is built with honey inside, which is great. Andy has a lot of experience in the food industry. He's worked with a lot of larger brands and some smaller brands. Previously, he was at Corn Foods and Cauliflower. And now working with Honey Mamas, he's really focused on selling into various retailers, as well as some different Ecomm and D2C channels. So just a ton to unpack here. I had a really fun time catching up with Andy. I think this was a great conversation.
Yeah, I really love this. I think one of my big takeaways was the excitement to hear that some of these smaller brands coming into retail are working together as a team, or at least as a partnership, even if it's temporarily, as opposed to some kind of like adversarial, purely competitive kind of relationship. So it's really cool to hear the moves that some smaller brands are making in retail.
Yeah, I think that was really valuable, kind of hearing that it doesn't all have to be cutthroat competition. There's enough room and a growing space for people to work together. I also loved how they had a focus on Ecomm as kind of a testing ground and a place to try new things and pivot more quickly than you can in traditional retail outlets. I think that was a really valuable takeaway.
Yeah, just so many good insights, I think, for brands of all sizes.
Awesome. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Hi, Andy.
Hi, how's it going?
Great. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Let's go ahead and start off. I want to, dive in a little bit into some of the different things you're doing in retail and Ecomm for Honey Mamas. But could you give us just a little bit of background? Tell us a little bit about Honey Mamas' story.
Sure. Yeah. So Honey Mamas was, like I'm sure a lot of startup natural brands were, was started at a farmer's market in Portland, Oregon. Our founder, Christy Goldsby, was a baker, originally had a bakery shop, and she had a friend who was doing an elimination diet, if you will, and kind of was able to create this product based upon those things that they could have, and ended up creating this wonderful product that she decided to, take and start selling at a farmer's market. It was quite successful there. And from there just started to grow slowly into retail, mostly in the Pacific Northwest. And from there, over the last little over a decade now, we've been able to expand nationwide. So coast to coast, and a lot of retailers, very strong in the natural channel, and just starting to kind of grow into more conventional and mass chains as of today.
Perfect. Can you explain that term a little bit more towards me, kind of starting from natural and going to mass chains? Give me some examples of what you're talking about when you say that.
Sure. So natural channel would be, Whole Foods, Sprouts, natural grocers. There's several independent chains throughout the country, and some big conglomerates, if you will. So Infra and NCG are another, so the National Co-op Grocers Association, and then Infra, the Independent Natural Retailers Food Association. These are a number of single store and multi-store chains that have gotten together to kind of create themselves the ability to have more buying power together so they can compete. So that's really your natural channel right there. And there's, again, a number of independent small chains throughout the country that just work on their own as well. Your conventional is more your bigger chains throughout the country. So your Kroger, Albertsons, Safeway, those kind of chains. And then there's some other bigger ones that are more regionally based, like H-E-B, Publix, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, mass, you're talking about Target, Walmart, and the like there.
Awesome. What are some of the differences as you're kind of going up that scale? How does it make it a little bit different to sell into them, and are there different requirements on you?
Yeah, certainly. So a lot of it is, distribution. So what distribution you're available in. So, the big ones out there, KeHE and UNFI, and then there's a lot of, regional distributors throughout the country. As a small brand like us, we are growing into the smaller distributors first, and then kind of moving up from there. And that's really the biggest way. And just being able to prove out in the natural channel, Honey Mamas as an item that works, and becoming one of the top items in our category, and then getting the eyes of these bigger chains, because often they are talking to much, much bigger brands. As we all know, there's about 15 companies that own 80% of most grocery stores. So it's a challenge for us as a small brand to make a name for ourselves, get eyes on it. A lot of that takes funding too. And we've been, fortunate as a brand to secure some of that funding to help us get to that next level. So, I would say for us, that's been great, and that's been our path. Obviously, that's not the same for every brand, but certainly it's worked out for us.
Is there any sort of like rule of thumb? You mentioned funding there. Like, is there a level of volume that you really have to be able to do to get to each of those individual tiers?
Not necessarily. It is going to be different for every brand. One brand that I worked for in the past, we grew so very fast that funding was never an issue to find. I've also worked for slower growth brands, and funding can be more challenging. So it's going to be a different level for every company. There's no real one answer to that. It's just about seeking it out, trying to do really well with the products that you have in store, and hoping that you can find that funding through that success.
Gotcha. Tell me a little bit more about, so you talked about kind of being in the natural category and kind of being one of the more maybe indulgent products in that category. Tell me a little bit more about the state of the category and kind of how, how you're finding, selling it in and really communicating to the customer what you're all about.
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is an ongoing conversation that we continue to have about, where this category lives in store, what this category is, who should be in it. So, for the first time really in my career, we've had the opportunity to really work alongside competition to help retailers know where to put us in store, and what items to have on their shelves. Should it be more dessert driven, or should it be in produce or dairy, or where should this category live? And, it's different for every retailer, of course, but it's been kind of great to not just see our competition as competition, but really as like friends to help grow this together. So like kind of becoming co-category captains across these retailers. And now the natural channel, and the reason we've had so like a lot of success in the natural channel, is because a lot of those stores knew what to do with a product like ours and our competition very early on. They brought us in, they put us in the right place, and they helped drive consumers to those sets. As we've grown into the conventional channel and into the mass channel, some have done a very good job without that help, and others we've had to really sort of help guide where in store this should go, and who should be there. So it's been, like I said, ongoing, and I think it will continue to be ongoing as we grow into more regional conventional chains, and showing them what to do with it, and providing them with the data and information that proves out that case. So it's been a lot of fun to not just be like kind of stuck in one place and this is where you go and there's no real like conversation about that. It's been fun to really work alongside our competition and our retailers to help them grow this space.
I'm curious, like how much of that is well defined and how much they're looking to you to like help define it. I kind of take for granted when I'm walking around the grocery store that certain things are grouped together and where I can find different things. But especially like you said, kind of a product that crosses categories. I'm curious how that conversation goes.
Yeah, it's a great question. This is why I love being on the brand side, because we have a lot of information that we can utilize to help retailers. And the truth is, most times they look to us to be the experts, because the category managers that we're working with at retailers are often swamped. They have a lot of stuff thrown at them all the time, samples sent their way all the time, decks and information. And it's almost like an overload for them. So at times when we do get these opportunities to sit down with them and speak to them about our particular brand or our particular category, they're often looking to us to, guide them, to show them what to do. So they can go back to their team and say, hey, listen, this is the information that we're receiving, especially if they're hearing it from multiple sources. This is where we should be putting this category, or if they don't have it already, or maybe this is where we should be moving it if they do and it's not doing as well as they'd like to. So I'd hate to put like a percentage on it of how many retailers are looking to us, but I will say that a number of them do, expect us to be the experts, and rightfully so, to help them out.
Yeah, I'm curious for like a new brand coming up, trying to kind of break this ground. I'm thinking there's probably, two sides to that equation, right? Like by going that route, you're differentiating a little more. You're kind of creating your own category and, creating a new product line versus like, especially when you're new to market. I'm curious if there's any thought to, hey, let's try to align ourselves with something that's very well understood. Like try to define ourselves as a chocolate bar or as a, refrigerated brownie, something like something that kind of already exists in as a way to, get yourself into or make yourself more understandable to, the buyers.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because I think it'll be different for every brand. It'll be different for every product, of course. I think my recommendation is it's helpful to define what you are and where you want to go, certainly, but I think you do need to be open to the possibility of moving somewhere else. Even to this day, we still talk about with certain retailers who just don't necessarily have the space or want to create the space where we'd love to be, about looking at different opportunities within those retailers. So, for example, we love to be in a produce set with our competition, alongside, the Perfect Bars of the world. Midday Squares is another one that's come up recently in the last couple of years and is doing very well. We love to be by them because we think we can all be successful together. However, we understand that going into some retailers that simply don't have that space in the category or the spot in the store that we want to go, they may have it somewhere else. And we're certainly open to those suggestions and moving to those places within that store and hoping that our competition goes with us. We're really differentiated from our competition because of we lean more toward the indulgence. We're not we don't really have protein in our products, so we're not pushing that aspect of it where a lot of our competition is. However, a lot of consumers walking to the shelf are looking for both things, right? They're looking for a healthy indulgence as well as looking for something with protein in it. So I think being, the long-winded answer to that question is just being open to the possibility of being somewhere in the store that maybe you didn't set out to be, but it could work for the product that you're selling.
I want to ask about it. I'm just really fascinated about the idea of looking at your competition as a partner in this space. I imagine it takes a different type of leadership in an organization to say, yes, let's work with our competition when we're talking to buyers to get into certain spaces to kind of bring them along with us. Can you speak a little bit about the difference in that mentality? I imagine there's older organizations that would say, absolutely not. We would rather take up everything and kick them out if we can. What's that like with, it just seems like a totally different mindset when you're going into this kind of space.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've never in my career really had this, and I think it's an opportunity, really. I've never had it. And certainly we don't share everything with our competition, or we don't share most things with our competition, of course. But, when you have opportunities at, big shows like Expo or even at distributor shows, like just taking those moments to talk to them about, what they're thinking, what they're maybe going after, and kind of trying to find those opportunities about how we work together. It's never like to your point, it's never been a thing that I've ever dealt with before. So yeah, it definitely takes a little bit of like swallow your pride almost and learn to work together with the people that ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all trying to win against each other. There's no denying that whatsoever. But if we can find a way to win together in a way, then I think I've heard this a lot, the raising tide rises all boats, right? So this is just one of those things that we try to remember, is that without them, we would really wouldn't have a spot in the store, you know? So, and trying to get them to see that way too has been, it's been good for us, truthfully.
Do you notice that buyers react differently to that? I imagine you're coming to buyers a little bit differently, and I imagine that they are picking up on that as well as a change.
Yeah, somewhat. I was on a meeting with a retailer not too long ago, actually, and they asked the question, and I kind of beat around it at first and realized what was being asked. They were like, "Where would you put this item in the store?" And then I had this moment of like, "Oh, they're probably asking all of our competitive brands like where it would be and want to hear what all of our answers were." And it's interesting. It turned out that they're not moving to the category I thought they would, but they are moving to a different spot of the store. So I'm sure they took all of those answers in and then they made their own decision. But yeah, I would say that it's definitely being recognized. And this was, a not a super small chain, but about 100 store chain in Northern California that was asking this question. And it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, yeah, this is what's happening in this current space.
Yeah, I love to hear that you all are affecting change in that way, because I think we hear from some business owners that it seems so insurmountable and it's so difficult because these, like you mentioned, the big companies that own such a big percentage seem to run the show. And so it's cool to see different ways that the smaller companies are really affecting change in that way. So that's just
Yeah.
exciting to hear about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious if you have a take with some of those larger brands. I remember a few weeks or months ago, there was a viral LinkedIn meme going around with, I think it was the Reese's peanut butter cups that were labeled as like plant free or like only plant based. I forget the exact terminology they used, but a lot of people came out and they're like, no, Reese's, you can't rebrand yourself as like a plant based bar, even though it was technically, dairy free essentially. But yeah, I'm curious to get your kind of feel of like, now that these larger brands are starting to dip their toes into this category, is that changing kind of some of the camaraderie, or does it deepen the camaraderie of smaller brands in the category, or do you accept the larger brands in? I mean, does that help your case or hurt your case?
What I would say is that it's clear we're having an effect, right? Smaller brands, and not just Honey Mamas, but I would say that it's clear that they've taken notice to our success, our competition success in these categories, and just really small brands in general. So we went through, a lot of years where big brands were just, buying up small brands, and that seemed to slow down a little bit in the last couple of years. And to me, that's pretty clear that they're trying to figure out how to beat us. And, that's, I take a little bit of pride in that. It means we're doing something. We must be having some sort of effect, which is great. And I know obviously like our consumers love us, and they're trying to figure out how to gain some of that.
Definitely. I'd love to pivot a little bit. I know we talk a lot here about Ecomm and really focus on the D2C channel, but I'm curious if you can give us a little bit about what is Honey Mama's doing online. And I know you are really retail focused, but like, how do those two channels work together? And how do you look at the D2C channel?
Yeah, so starting last year, we really took a different approach to D2C. Instead of just selling all of our products online, we really started to use it as a test for new products. So as an example, I'll take you back a few years. We would always launch this cherry hazelnut item for Valentine's Day and run it for, a couple months around that time. And it was highly successful. We would sell out of it every year. And ultimately that is now part of a rotating everyday item that we have out in retail. In fact, it just launched again just like a week ago, actually. So right around January 1st, it launched in stores again. And what we kind of realized is that with D2C, we have a pretty good following online and an opportunity to test out these new flavors. So we've done a matcha mint and some other ones as well, just to see how well they work. And having that sort of bar with cherry hazelnut for how well it did, we can kind of gauge everything else against it. And so we've kind of, we still sell some of our everyday items on D2C, but it's not where, to your point, our big focus for our overall business. More so just kind of trying to create engagement. And when consumers are looking for a product that maybe we don't have online, then we're using our store locator, directing them to our store locator to say, what items they're looking for in the areas that they're in, and they can go ahead and find those in store. So it's a really great way for us to use it to, guide consumers to where we would love them to purchase the majority of our items. And then as far as ecom goes, ecom has really grown in the last several years and really took a large growth during COVID, right? Because a lot of people were buying groceries online or, looking for other opportunities to get their groceries. And it's kind of stayed since then. It was growing before them and before COVID, and then post COVID, it's continued to grow, and people's lives are super busy. So they're looking for those opportunities. So we've really taken that opportunity to dive in and see what items work. Because it's not necessarily always the same as retail, that, your typical retail store, for what consumers are looking for. So we're still testing a number of things to see what works best in ecom, and it's sort of fledgling for us and continuing to grow. But it's been fun to kind of learn that side of the industry as well.
When you're using it in that kind of experimental, trying new things out, do you set targets for yourself? Coming into 2024, you say, hey, I'd love to see e-commerce grow to a specific level, or is it truly just like, hey, we'll see what we get out of it, but it's really more of an experimental ground to feed other channels?
It's kind of both. It's really ecom retailer by ecom retailer. Some of them are doing really well, and we know what is working there, and we can kind of set a goal for those. And then for others, we are still testing things out to see what works. Because, like I said, I mean, they're all different. They all have different offerings and models, if you will, to get consumers to purchase. And so it's really both experimenting with some and setting hard goals with others.
Gotcha.
Can I ask you to dive into maybe a little bit what the differences between them are? I know you mentioned like Hungry Root. Are some of those smaller ones just like better to work with? Are they easier? Is it better to get into something bigger? Can you talk about like the differences between them?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are, you have like your differences between, some of them are like meal services, right? And they're looking for healthy indulgences to add to their, meal packages that they're sending to their consumers. Others are, strictly just groceries, and some of them are both. And so, figuring out like the sizes of items and price points to put into those retailers so that they can move through enough of them. I'm not sure that totally answers your question, but it's like it's kind of all over the place. So they're all great to work with. I would not say that one that I've worked with is better or worse than another, certainly, but they're just different. So it's us just trying to figure it out, really.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an exciting thing for people to hear, because I think as businesses, when you're trying to expand into these different places, it may seem like, okay, there really is just like only one type of online marketplace that we're trying to get into, but to think about, oh yeah, meal services and some other opportunities are out there. And if you can expand into all of them, great, but maybe some really fit your brand versus another one. I just think it's exciting to hear there's more opportunities and more creative opportunities out there too.
Yeah, we're in a fortunate spot too that we are a self-manufactured brand. So since we don't work with co-manufacturers, rather, we have the ability to kind of turn on a dime and do things a little bit differently. And we can create new pack sizes. We can work, closely with our retailers, and we have a food service side of our business as well too. And we've been able to create some smaller sizes as like trial almost for food services. So we're in some corporate campuses right now where they buy our product and then give it away to their employees for free. And this is it's a great marketing opportunity and business opportunity for us to use that as building smaller sizes, using our self-manufacturing to make changes if we need to, and offer those products up.
I love that. That seems like a really creative way to get it out there too, in a corporate space.
I'm curious, as I'm listening to you talk through all these different channels between different ecom marketplaces, I know you have a great presence on your own website, talking about food service. How do you keep all of this straight? And I'm thinking like for the new business starting up, like, I think we'd all probably agree, like if you're going to try any of these, like try one first and make it work and then maybe add something on. But, how do you know how to start adding on some of the different channels? And as you do start getting what sounds like really customized approaches in each individual one, how do you keep all that straight and prioritize it?
Working with external partners, we've got a couple of really great brokers out there that help us with a lot of that, and then just internal team collaboration. We're a pretty small team, and across the board, and it takes you have to have complete buy-in from everybody on the team, which we have great complete buy-in here at Honey Mamas. Everyone here loves this brand, wants to see this brand succeed. And we just have to work really closely together. And we've done a really great job of that, I would say, is staying close to one another, making sure things don't fall through the crack, and then working closely with a really great broker partner, retailer by retailer, making sure that they know what our priorities are. They have a lot of brands in their bag too that they're carrying. So ensuring that they know what our top, 5 things that we need them to do retailer by retailer to help us out really helps them kind of focus and us get to where we need to get to on a day-to-day basis. And then, it does take a lot of work, I would say, internally and on an individual basis. There's a lot going on all the time to manage a lot of different retailers and channels. And it is a lot. I will say that anyone who wants to get into this industry and thinks it's going to be easy is coming to a rude awakening for sure. But it's fun too, right? I mean, it gets me up every morning, and I love to, see the excitement that people have when they first try our brand, and it seems to happen on a daily basis.
Awesome. Can you share, like, specifically when you talk about team size? I don't know how many you have internally or how many broker partners you have, if you can just kind of give a picture of what it looks like to have an organization this size.
So internally at Honey Mamas, I don't know the exact number because we've got our self-manufacturing. I can tell you office staff is about 20 total from top to bottom. Manufacturing staff is probably another 50 or 60. Now, granted, if a brand were out there that had a co-manufacturer, obviously, like that would be different. But with us having that somewhere in there, so somewhere in the neighborhood of about 70 or 80 people, changing often with manufacturing staff and sometimes office staff as well too. Broker partners, we work with one national broker who manages a lot of our business across the country, and then some, regional or retailer specific brokers. So probably 4 or 5 of those that we work with.
That's cool. Yeah, it's good to kind of, I feel like we hear about a lot of those terms, but it's good to put some specifics around it and kind of get a feel for, what it takes to kind of get to the size you all are at.
Yeah. And as a reminder, that's 10 years on, right? So, some brands that I've worked for have been even smaller than that and have been around longer, and some have been bigger and around shorter. So it depends. It all often depends on just like what the brand is and the product is and everything. So,
yeah. And we always think directly, we're pretty focused on the marketing side. And one of my favorite things is to say, like, the techniques that you hear about and a lot of the things that, get talked about all the time are often developed for much of the larger brands that everybody knows about and you hear about all the time. Like, the same approaches aren't necessarily going to work for smaller brands, and one, won't work, but 2, you don't have the resources to implement them, even if you wanted to try them. So it's good to kind of hear that too, as we talk about some of these things. If you are sitting there feeling overwhelmed, like, how am I possibly going to get into all these different online stores and into retail and all these different things? Start slow, grow it up. If you don't have a 70-person organization, you're probably not doing some of those things as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not a one size fits all. It's going to be different for everybody. We're fortunate to be self-manufactured, but I've worked for brands that certainly were not and couldn't be because of just the funding and everything that would need to go into being that is exorbitant, and they are not going to be able to do it. So it's definitely going to be brand by brand, case by case, maybe even item by item sometimes. So it's different for everybody.
It's great. I'm curious, what's next for Honey Mamas? What should we expect coming down the pipe?
Well, we're going to continue to innovate with new flavors. We have a great base of a product that really lends itself to us being able to come out with new items. So we really keep an eye on what people are looking for. You know, with the social media as big as it is nowadays, you can kind of see with I remember when everyone was making banana bread like crazy over COVID. So we look at those kind of things and see where the trends are and seeing what flavors we can come out with. So we've got some really exciting new flavors coming this year, later this year. And, we launched, like I was mentioning earlier, a seasonal rotating item. We're calling it a limited edition rotating item now. And we all on the same UPC. So we have the ability to rotate in flavors as much as we want on that SKU, which is great. We have a number of really great retailers carrying it now, so we can get them something new on the shelf all the time. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled to our website as well as our store locator and retailer shelves. They're going to be changing all the time this year.
Really cool. And can you tell our audience where they can find you?
Yeah, honeymamas.com, and then on all of our socials at honeymamas. We're there. Come say hi.
Great. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time today. I think we learned a lot. I'm really excited to continue to follow Honey Mamas and see where they go. I'd encourage all of our listeners to go out and get yourself some Honey Mamas. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much, Andy. We really appreciate it. And thank you to those watching and listening for tuning into Ecom Marketing with the Pitbulls. Just remember to subscribe to get all of our podcasts and YouTube videos as soon as they're released. And if you find the show valuable, we'd be really appreciative if you could leave a like on YouTube or on your favorite podcast player. And we will catch you all next time.
It's Andy. I'm here with Percy, the original PPC Pitbull. Thanks for checking us out today. If you're ready to take the next step in your digital marketing journey, come on over to ppcpitbulls.com and book a free strategy session. We'll take a few minutes to get to know you and your brand, and I promise you'll leave with actionable insights that you can implement today. Working together, we're going to get you on the right track towards reaching your unique e-commerce goals.